Hi everyone and welcome back. Mindy here with you today, and I'm going to be sharing how I created this card and making it look like a sketchbook on the front of my card. I'm going to be using a couple stamp sets from Gina Designs. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is create my background. So what I'm doing is I'm working on a white craft mat to protect my surface. I'm using a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock, and I actually have it on the smooth side of the cardstock. Then I took some peacock feathers distress oxide ink, smooshed it onto my craft mat, and spritzed it with some water. Then I'm just taking that cardstock and I'm smooshing it down onto that watered down ink that I have there. And this is just creating an artsy background for my image that I'm going to stamp. So I did that with the peacock feathers. I'm just going to wipe up my mess there a little bit and then dry this with my heat tool. And I'll dab up any little water spots that were kind of sitting there. Then I'm going to come in with picked raspberry, and I'm doing the same thing. I smush that down onto my craft mat, spritzed with water, and then I'm smooshing my cardstock into there. Now you can see that I'm creating a purple here because I did use pink and blue. So that is something you want to keep in mind when you're working with colors, is what colors are going to mix well. Especially since I have this all over my background. If you were singling out a certain area of your card, you could probably add maybe a green. But since I do have this all over, I wanted to cover the entire background. I just stuck with the blue and the pink. I wanted that pink to be a little bit more prominent, so I am drying this in between, and I just smushed it down the once because I really wanted that pink to stand out. And then I'm just drying that again with the heat tool. I'll dab up any extra water spots and just pick up a little more of that ink. You can add as much or as little as you want to this, or move the cardstock around a little bit more. Whatever look you have envisioned or what you're going for, that's what you have, or that's what you can work with. So then I'll just finish that off by drying that off with my heat tool. You will get a little bit of warping, just depends on how much heat you're applying. And now I have this gorgeous watercolor type of background using that ink smooshing technique. Now I'm taking the open book stamp set. This has this huge book on here that I'm just in love with, and there's so many different things you can add to the pages of this book. I decided I wanted kind of like a sketchbook, and I'm going to be adding a floral image here in just a minute. But I took that big book and I tilted it so it's crooked on my cardstock, loaded this into my MISTI, and then I'm using the Gina Designs Amalgam ink to stamp this. And I'm being super careful with this because there is some open area in there for the pages. I didn't want ink to transfer on those pages, so I'm just lightly pressing down. I do stamp this probably about 3 times, just doing it real lightly, not a lot of pressure, and then I'll have some great black lines there for it. Next, I'm taking this huge floral image from the Grand Garden stamp set. This is one of my all-time favorite stamp sets, and I'm inking that up with the amalgam ink as well and stamping that twice to the middle of my pages, or right in the middle of my book, sorry. I did already have a mask in my stamp set that I had created at one time using the Gina Designs masking magic sheets. So I thought, why not? Let's add some leaves to this. So I'll stamp those with the amalgam ink as well. I had created a similar card like this without the leaves, and I had a lot of questions on how I created it, how I did the background. So I did change this up a little bit just by adding some of the leaves. You could add other images to the middle of this book, whatever you prefer. Now this is the real fun part. This is where I really turned it into a sketchbook kind of look. So I'm using my W's to add some shading to my flower. I actually started with a W2. I wasn't sure how dark I wanted to go. I honestly would have started with a W3, but that one is pretty much out of ink and I don't have a re-inker for it. So I started with the W2, and all I'm doing is laying down some color underneath each leaf, or underneath each, tongue-tied, underneath each petal. And then I'm just following the artist drawn lines that are on there. So I'm just bringing those out, adding some light flicking motions. They're not even, I don't have them spaced real great. I just wanted to have a little bit of dimension on there, like if somebody had drawn this in a sketchbook. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's kind of the fun thing about sketchbooks, is they're not perfect. You're just sketching out ideas. Then I came in with a W1 and I pulled that out just a little bit further. I didn't color the entire image. I just wanted to have those shadings underneath each petal. So when your petal is laying on top of another, it's casting a shadow, and that's pretty much what I did. Once I did the W1, I decided I did want those a little bit darker in the shadow areas, so I did bring in the W4, and you could see how that really adds a more dramatic effect to the shading. So I'm just doing that a little bit. I'm not bringing that out a lot. And then I will go over them with the W2 and the W1. As far as coloring on this with your Copic markers, that's your choice. I didn't notice any damage to my tips or anything like that. It is a little bit harder to blend because it is watercolor cardstock. It's a thicker paper. And even though it is the smooth side, it is still a little textured. So that is up to you if you want to color on top of the Distress Oxides. I've done it before and I've never had any problem, but I did just want to throw that out there, that if you're worried about the tips of your markers and things like that, totally up to you. Like I said, I never had any problem with it, and I actually really love doing this on top of a watercolor-ish type of background. So here you can see I'm just going over those lines a little bit more. I do color them up a couple times just to really add that depth and dimension. And there are so many different images you could add to your book. You could use, there's a few different images on the stamp set. There's the cat and the pencil or the pen, you know, tons of different things, tons of other floral images that Gina carries in her store. I will have my supplies listed down below in the video description and also on my blog, so be sure to head over there. I will have more pictures available as well of some other projects I created. Now you can see I am going into the leaves now, and this I kept really simple. I added some shadow areas where the petals would be hanging over the leaves, so I added the darker areas there, and then I went right down the center of the leaves. Whether it's correct as far as where your light source is coming from, I'm not worrying about that because, like I said, it's a sketchbook. So in sketchbooks, nothing is perfect. You're just sketching out the ideas. And I just thought this was such a great background to add to this. Now, another thing I wanted to do, and this I actually found an idea on Pinterest for this. So I am taking my darkest color, the W4, and I'm going around the entire flower and the leaves. And I'm trying to follow the shape of the book. You could see how the lines kind of curve. You could see that it's open if you're following the lines of the book or the shape of the pages. So I'm following that shape and just adding flicking motions from the edge of the flower and the leaves, and I'm flicking out. And then I do come in with my W2 and W1, starting from that W4. So I went all the way back to the line to just lighten that up a little bit and then bring that color out just a little bit. And I am actually purposely making sure you can see those flicking marks. I wasn't trying to blend them out. I wanted that on purpose. That's the look that I wanted to go for. And then with the W1, I did bring that out quite a bit just to give that sketchbook look a little bit more definition. And then I do take my W4 and I go right down the line of the middle of the book, because that's to me where a shadow would be when you're opening up a book. Now there are some gorgeous sentiments on the open book stamp set, but I decided for this card, I'm actually going to use this sentiment from the Grand Garden, and it's called Dream Big is a sentiment. So I arranged that onto my cardstock, prepped it with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to ink this sentiment up with some VersaMark ink and stamp that down onto that top corner of my cardstock. And I'm okay that it's going a little bit on my image. And then I can just take the gold embossing powder from Gina K Designs, sprinkle that on, and then I'll heat that up with my heat tool. And I have this beautiful embossed sentiment on the front of my card. Then I took some craft foam that I cut down to the size of my card panel. I actually trimmed my card panel, the front panel, down to 4 by 5 1/4. And then I'm using the Terrific tape from Gina Designs. I'm putting that on both sides of my craft foam. And then I'm going to attach that to my front panel that has the images on it. And then attaching this to my card base. So it just raises up my card base a little, or my front panel a little bit, gives it some dimension. Now I really love how all this came together. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so and would like to see more tutorials from me. I'm also including an image of the first card I had done using this technique as well. Thanks again for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.